Welcome! Today we're going to be talking about all the books I read in the month of April. So, because I have a second channel where I do weekly reading vlogs, talk to you spoiler-free about everything that I'm reading, and then also do spoiler discussions for some of my favorite books that I read throughout the month. I do a lot of talking about these books already, so I figured I'll try something different this month for the wrap-up, and you can just let me know if you like it or not. I figured we could do a tier list for these where I'll just give a snippet instead of trying to do another chat about each of these books. It's just going to be a snippet of that book, what I thought of it, and I'm also going to give comp titles for each of these books. So if you like this book, then maybe check this one out. That'll just give you a real quick overview of what I've read. If you already watch my vlog channel, then this will be a fresh spin on me discussing it, and if you don't watch my vlog channel, then this will be a really quick thing. And then I have in the description of this video a spreadsheet of everything that I read this month, and any title that looks interesting to you, you can go to the spreadsheet and find the book title, and then the link to the appropriate videos where I talked about that particular book are in the spreadsheet as well. Shout out to Lynn, always, you're amazing. Thanks for keeping that spreadsheet up. So this month I had a couple of titles that I was obsessed with and read, I just couldn't stop reading, which is good news. I had a couple books that just were the biggest letdown in the whole wide world. I do have a DNF on this list. We have books, we have manga, we have all the things, so let's talk about it. Okay, so for the tiers, we have the Iroh tier. You're perfect. There's nothing to change about you. You just keep being amazing. The next tier below that is You're Doing Amazing, Sweetie. Not quite perfect, but I'm proud of you. You've done a great job. Next we have You Did Your Job. And then we have You Tried. And finally, You've Betrayed Me. The first book that I finished this month, unfortunately I did kind of start the month on a rocky note. It was the second Sanderson Secret Project book, the handbook for, do you know what is this title? The Frugal Wizard's Handbook for Surviving Medieval England. So, I wasn't that in love with this book. It had some really fun side things that kind of saved it for me. I think I'll put it in You Did Your Job. I feel pretty middle of the road about this book, but without those really fun side things like the doodles and the margins, it would probably just go under You Tried. One of my least favorite Sanderson books. I didn't hate it by any means, but when I tier rank his books again someday, it'll be near the bottom. To me, this book read like a lit RPG, or a lot of people are saying that it read like an isekai. So my comp title for you, if you enjoyed this book, you might check out Beneath the Dragon Eye Moons, because this is a lit RPG book. It follows a girl who died, and then through the help of a goddess, she's transported to another world where she has to figure out the mechanics of it and figure out how the system works and how her magic works. If you really enjoyed Handbook, you should definitely check out Beneath the Dragon Eye Moons. Next up, we have Yona of the Dawn. So I read, I don't know how many volumes of this that I read, but I'm in the middle of the series. I'm actually closing in on being caught up. And this, again, I've said this many times before, was a rough start. I did not enjoy the beginning. It had a lot of bumps in the road, but oh my goodness, has it really come into its own. So it's doing amazing at this point. Characters, I'm in love with. The build-up and the tension, incredible. The character development for a main character, just, You're Doing Amazing, Sweetie. Unfortunately, I haven't read enough manga to really give a satisfying comp title for this, because I'm keeping the books with book comp titles and manga with manga comp titles. But if you want to, I could try to mix it up in the future. So I'm just gonna say Fruits Basket, because I think that's the only other shoujo I've read, but I definitely enjoy Yona more than Fruits Basket. Next is Feet of Clay by Terry Pratchett. This is my third Pratchett book, and it is in Iroh tier. This one got a dedicated spoiler review. Oh, actually, Handbook also got a dedicated review, but it was mostly spoiler free. Anyway, Feet of Clay got a dedicated spoiler review, and in that review, I did cite a couple of nitpicks that I had with this book, but I don't care. This book was incredible, and I think about it often. Pratchett is truly phenomenal at creating interesting characters, world, systems, but then also having many things actually that he wants to discuss and weaving it into the narrative, weaving it into the characters in a way that feels very cohesive and feels very natural. And that just causes the reader to have to discuss, to have to think a little bit more deeply about things. And I really, really loved what he had to say in this one. Really, really loved. Like, I think about this one a lot, actually. And we'll probably be thinking about it for a very long time. It was so freaking good. My comp title for Feet of Clay is probably going to be a little bit underwhelming, and it's just going to be Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I haven't read a ton of satire, absurdist fiction yet, so my repertoire in that category is kind of weak, but you should read Hitchhikers. And if you've already read it, you should read it again. It's one of the best books in the world. Next book is the book that I DNF'd this month. I mentioned it in a reading vlog that I quit. I was so angry. I was so angry. I loved it so much in the beginning, and then it just ruined itself. The Curse of Oak Island, I believe the tagline or subtitle for this book is the world's longest running treasure hunt or some such. So, this is partially my fault. I admit this. I take responsibility for my own flaws. I did not look into this book deeply. I read a quick description of it, a quick, summary. Not summary. Just the back of the book. It was an audiobook, but you know, that. I read that and I thought, ha! Pirates! Yay! This is not about pirates. I loved this book in the beginning because in the beginning it told me the history of Captain Kidd, one of the most notorious pirates in history. And it was very interesting. And it talked about the treasure that he allegedly buried and how he bargained or attempted to bargain for his life when he was going to be hung to, I'll help you find the treasure that I hid. I hid this treasure, and they didn't believe him and they killed him, and now people have been hunting for it for centuries. And it was a lot of digging holes and a lot of people's lives being ruined because of the digging of the holes and just centuries and centuries. And I know that this is a mini series on History Channel or Discovery or something. I haven't seen it. And I know that they never found the treasure and they still haven't found it and the series is still ongoing. I didn't need a satisfying ending. I just needed it to be about the treasure hunt, please. But it's not. It's about, this read like a book where a man did a lot of research and refused to let any of it go to waste. He would not let a piece of research go untold. So we get so many side tangents about things that are just tacitly connected, just barely connected to the actual point of the book. We'll talk about it for a real long time. And I got so tired of getting side tangents about famous figures that one time thought about this island, or his daughter who he hired to do some research and she was having a hard time and she turned it in a little bit late. Oh my goodness, condense, sir. You betrayed me. I wanted a pirate treasure hunt and I got rambling nonsense. Comp title, Island of the Lost. It takes place on an island. It's people being marooned on the island, shipwrecked on the island and trying to survive and get their way out. So it's different, but it's about an island. It takes place on an island. It's interesting, and it is also pretty side tangenty, so you two will have fun. Or you will have fun if you like your side tangents. Island of the Lost was much better, though. Gods of Jade and Shadow. This follows a girl who is wanting to set off on her own, and she's trying to save up to be able to accomplish that, and then through a series of events, opens a chest, awakens a Mayan death god, and then has to go on a quest for him or else she dies. I'm gonna say you did your job a little bit better than Handbook did its job. And actually I think I'm gonna move Handbook down to You Tried. Because the story itself was You Tried. It's the additional things like the doodles and the artwork and the Handbook side tangents, which are a part of the story itself. The Handbook was really what made that book. But I'm gonna put Handbook in You Tried. It's almost a You Did Your Job, but as far as the plot itself, I don't think it really got there. Still like some things about it, but yeah, that's how I feel. Anyway, Gods of Jade and Shadow, you did your job. It was a quest. It was interesting. It went in a direction that I notoriously don't care about. I think it's fine to say the romance kind of stepped forward a little bit too forefront, and I wasn't into the direction that it chose to focus on. Comp title for this is going to be The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea. It's different lore, but for both of these books, the lore and the world that this is set in are just so good. For Gods of Jade and Shadow, easily the best part was that it was based on Mayan lore, and that lore and how that was integrated into the story and the kind of characters and creatures that they met and interacted with and the places that they went and the shenanigans that they got up to, and that it was all based around that, and it was so immersive. Easily what kept me reading. And even though Gods of Jade and Shadow is adult and The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea is YA, they kind of follow a very similar trajectory where you have the inciting incident, you kind of have these side tangenty things that you go through that weave you into the world that kind of eventually get you to where you're going, and where you were going was ultimately a romance. So they're very similar in that way. So if you like that kind of style of story, check them both out. And for both, what makes me enjoy them is the setting and the immersive nature of that setting. Next up, we have The Warrior's Apprentice. So I think that this was a really solid start. This is a sci-fi that follows a young boy, and it's military sci-fi, and really the characters are what sold it for me, and their individual hurdles that they have to overcome in this world and this society. And I think it was a really good introduction to this larger thing that this author is doing. I don't know a lot about it, but I know that there's several different reading orders, and this was the first book that was recommended to me as a start, and I think that it was a really solid starting point, and I'm invested enough that I am going to continue on, at least at this point. I had a really hard time thinking of a comp title for this one because I don't read a lot of military sci-fi, or any military sci-fi. So I went with The Last Quintista, which admittedly is a stretch, but in The Warrior's Apprentice, Miles and his best friend do go to a different world, and they're set in a new setting and a new environment and new things that they have to get used to. And it is a lot dependent on Miles' wherewithal and his ingenuity and his ability to think on the moment and kind of just BS his way through everything. And The Last Quintista, they move from Earth to another setting, and Petra's ingenuity and tenacity are a big driving force in the story. This Warrior's Apprentice, I don't know if it's YA or adult. I would assume it's probably classified as YA, and The Last Quintista is middle grade. So again, not the perfect comp title, but they do have some similarities, and they're both very good. Oh no. Okay, so next we have The Magician's Land and The Magician's King. And what do I do with these? I have an hour-long discussion on the second channel for the trilogy. I don't know why some of you watch that. That's too long. But there's just so much to say about this series, and there's so much that I love, like aggressively love about this series. I could not stop reading it, and now that it's over, I'm sad because I would like more. But at the same time, it's so flawed, and there's so many things that I don't love about it. But I do love it. You know what? Oh no. You know what? Magician's Land, you did your job. I should probably put it here. That would probably be better. Magician's King, I think you might be doing great, sweetie. I think everybody that buddy read this with me is probably yelling at me right now because there was definitely plenty of people in the buddy read that were like, this is really bad, but you know what? I really loved this trilogy. I hated it too. I have such mixed, that's why it was an hour-long review. I really did love this trilogy despite all of its flaws. Comp title for The Magicians is Steelheart. I've only read the first book in the Steelheart trilogy, but if you like following a young boy who's kind of finding his own way and doing and figuring out what to do with the world and with himself, Steelheart is pretty good for that. You also might try The Catcher in the Rye if you are open to classics. Again, young boy, very flawed worldview, figuring it out. Sort of. Somewhat. Next up is Vagabond, and we're gonna just check that in IRO. Again, I didn't start Vagabond this month, I just continued it, and I don't know how many volumes I read this month, but the chunk that I read this month, easily S tier. Perfect. I don't have anything to say. I love this series. And again, I'm coming close to the end of it, and that's very sad for me. It's samurai historical fiction, but it's also taking a deeper look into the samurai life, historically, the beliefs and the code of that time, and looking at it all very openly, but also critically, and working through it all. And honestly, I still have so many questions about what Inoue is saying, but also he has invoked so many good conversations through this series. I'm reading it through with my friend Philip, and we're discussing it every single week, back and forth on each other's channels. And it's been such a good reading experience, especially such a good reading experience with a friend. And again, I'm really sad that it's coming to an end. Next is Bone Shard War. This is the conclusion to a trilogy that I have loved. So this is 5 perspectives, and it follows an empire that's ruled by the emperor, who he takes bone shards from individuals and uses them to power his constructs for magic. And this has very strong consequences to the people of the empire, and there's a lot of social unrest because of that, but there's also a lot of unrest because of sickness that's going across the empire, and because of a lot of political unrest. There's a lot going on, and while there being multiple perspectives, many areas that we're going to, many problems that we're trying to address, and just a lot of uneven ground, while all that's true, it's so readable, and it's so easy to read and so fun. It's a series that kind of is, it's like candy to me. It has its flaws, it's not perfect, but it's so fun, and I connect with these characters so much, and I'm so excited to see what they do. The plot in book 3, I think, was probably a little bit on the weaker side for a good chunk of it, but still good. I still enjoyed it. The conclusion to this trilogy, I'm gonna say you did amazing, sweetie. I'll probably put it before The Magician King. I don't know. Yeah, no, I will. I just really like The Magicians. I'm sorry, I just did. But yes, I think this was a solid conclusion. It's not perfect, but it's a trilogy that I just really like. For a comp title, I'm gonna say Rage of Dragons. It's also one that it's just so readable. It's so easy to get into and get addicted to, and just not want to stop, which is how I feel about both of these series. They're very, very different series. But as far as just readability mixed with enough to think about, I think that it's as good as I'm gonna do today. I also just realized that I forgot to give a comp title for Vagabond, and that's because I'm bad at this so far. I don't have enough manga under my belt to do a good job at recommending manga in this way. So Vinland Saga, I think, is a very good comp title because I've read very little. Next we have Under the Black Flag, and oh my goodness, this was great. So the reason I picked this up is because after The Curse of Oak Island let me down just so gloriously, I started searching for some reviewed, highly liked pirate stories. Not about a bunch of modern people digging holes, but actually the history of infamous pirates. And Under the Black Flag was very good. The goal of this nonfiction was to de-romanticize piracy because it's very, swashbuckling, adventure, legends, and they're morally gray. But in reality, they were criminals, and they were, not good guys. So it's about breaking down kind of where the legends come from and where the romanticization comes from, kind of trying to strip piracy of that romanticization, and then telling the true tales, as far as we know, of the most notorious pirates. Now, I will say, I deeply wish that he had said more about the pirates. It was just so brief. Each little thing about a pirate was so brief. But me and my obsessive nature, that just means that I've done a whole bunch of my own independent research on the pirates that I found particularly interesting. Also, it didn't succeed at de-romanticizing piracy at all for me. I mean, it was good. It was great. I'm happy to have read it, but I still love my swashbuckling tales. But I loved this. I loved reading this. Comp title, I'll say, is Shackleton. What was that book called? Comp title, I'll say, is Endurance, Shackleton's Great Adventure, Great Voyage. Incredible Voyage. Again, not even mildly the same subject matter, but I haven't read enough nonfictions about pirates to give you a satisfying comp title. Anyway, Midnight Tides I actually haven't finished at the point of recording this video, but I will finish it this weekend. And honestly, even if the ending is absolutely atrocious, the worst tier it's gonna be in is You're Doing Amazing, Sweetie, because this is easily my favorite Malazan book that I've read so far. So it's fine. It's an IRO. I'm really not worried about the ending of this book. There will be a spoiler review for this on my second channel soon. I need to finish it first and then get some notes together, which always takes a little bit of time for my Malazan books, but there will be a spoiler review soon. This book was incredible. It was hilarious. It was still deep. It still asked a lot of questions. It tied a lot of things together. It opened a lot of things up. It was such a good Malazan book. It was such a good book, just period. Anyway, these are the books that I read and DNF'd in the month of April. Generally, it was a very positive reading month, so I'm pleased. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you like this different kind of format for talking about books in a wrap-up, since I already talk about them so much on the second channel. I do want to bring the monthly here's what I read to the main channel, but I don't want it to be super repetitive, so let me know if you liked this, or if you want me to do something else, then, you know, maybe I will. I post videos every Monday and Friday on this channel, Tuesdays and Thursdays on the second channel. I'll see you again soon. Bye.